Hey everyone, David Kibido here with J&J Exterminating of Beaumont. I wanted to take a moment to explain what everyone saw flying through the air a couple nights ago. The short answer is Formosan termite swarmers. And feel free to stop the video here and call us to schedule a free inspection if you haven't done so already, because this is going to be a little bit longer video with a bit of a detailed explanation of why this is happening and why it matters to you if you are in fact seeing it. The Formosan termite, or Termites formosanus, is a termite native to southern China and Taiwan, formerly known as Formosa, hence the name Formosan termite. They were introduced into the United States after World War II and infested wooden cargo crates into the port cities along the Gulf Coast, such as New Orleans, Lake Charles, Orange, Port Arthur, and Beaumont, just to name a few. The Formosan termite is a subterranean termite, just like our native species, meaning they live and nest in the ground, but there are some important biological and behavioral characteristics that make them different and a much larger threat. Starting with their colony sizes. Our native species usually tops out around 300,000 members in a colony, while the Formosan can reach into the millions. This means that they can do a very large amount of damage in a relatively short period of time comparatively. While subterranean termites live in the ground, they feed on cellulose within the top few inches of the soil. A fun fact, termites are not evil. They do have a functional purpose in our ecosystem as decomposers of dead wood. So imagine a limb falling out of a tree in the woods. Termites eat the cellulose up and return it back to the earth. Without termites, we'd be up to our eyeballs in dead wood everywhere. But of course, the concern comes to our homes that are built out of what? That's right, dead wood. And that's why they're considered a structural pest. Formosan termites forage for food similarly to our native species. But another area where they differentiate is the Formosan's appetite for live trees. It is believed that this behavior evolved from the limited nature of available food source in a small island setting of its native habitat of Taiwan. Smaller landmass with a natural water barrier limiting colony expansion equals less trees creating deadfall. So let's just eat the trees. If you are finding termites in a tree here in Southeast Texas and Louisiana, it'd be a very safe bet that it is Formosan. The next and perhaps most important difference is the Formosan's ability to create carton nests above ground. Unless there's some kind of sustained moisture source like a leak in a roof or some faulty plumbing, our native species, while feeding above ground, will need to return to the soil for moisture. Formosan, on the other hand, will create a secondary nest site called a carton nest above ground that almost acts like a sponge that can trap ambient moisture in the air and provide them with enough moisture to survive without the need to return to the soil. And it looks something like this. This is a very small carton nest. So why is that important? Methods of treatment have to be tailored to the species you're trying to control. For instance, if you are treating an active native subterranean problem and use a repellent product as a barrier in the soil, you would effectively cut off access from the colony living in the ground, and any termites that are above ground feeding in the wall at the time would either die by coming into direct contact with the treatment or simply be stuck above ground without the ability to return for moisture and would eventually die of dehydration. That's great. But take that same treatment and use it against a Formosan problem. The same way you would cut off access from the main parent colony that's living in the ground. But if there was an undiscovered carton nest in the wall, those termites that are now stuck above ground will continue to thrive as an independent colony with all the moisture they need to survive. Now, let's talk about the swarm. To understand the swarm, first let's talk about briefly the caste structure of termite colonies. Termites are social insects, so like ants, termite colonies are structured where different members of the colony have different job functions, and they all operate as a collective to survive and reproduce. The biggest job, or the biggest job group, or caste, are the workers. These are the members of the colony that are responsible for foraging, feeding, and bringing food back to feed the other members of the colony. These are the ones that do the actual damage to structures and consist of around 90 to 98% of the total population. Next up are soldiers. They're very distinguishable by their larger headpieces and mandibles meant for fighting to defend the colony against outside threats and predators such as ants or even other termite colonies. They represent 3 to 5% of the population. Another unique characteristic of the Formosan termite and their soldier population is their ability to exude a white glue-like substance from a gland on their head, used as another defensive mechanism against threats. Next are the primary reproductives, or king and queen. Their only function in the colony is to reproduce. Termite queens lay eggs on an interval basis. They will lay up to 25 eggs in a minute, 30,000 eggs in a single day, and more than 11 million eggs that they can produce in a year. And last but definitely not least are the winged alates, or swarmers, as they're commonly known. When a colony reaches maturity, in order to maximize survival, these winged alates are formed and sent out from the colony to find a mate, find a new location, and create a new colony. These are the new kings and queens of brand new colonies. To maximize genetic diversity, multiple colonies will swarm at the exact same time, allowing some crossbreeding between colonies. The swarmers are triggered by the weather. High humidity, warm temperatures, light breeze are the biggest factors. The native species swarmers are black in body color, while the Formosan are more amber colored. The native species will swarm typically in early spring and will swarm during the day, midday, high noon, while the Formosan swarm typically from around May through June and swarm at night, and in much greater numbers due to their massive colony sizes. And like any night-flying insect, they are super attracted to sources of light and are instinctively drawn to them. This is why you'll hear advice to turn the lights out around the outside of your home around this time of year. After leaving the colony, they'll fly around, land on just about every surface, and soon lose their wings. Sustained flight isn't really the goal and is a very brief time, as it serves only to get them up and away so they can find a mate and return to the soil. You'll likely find some crawling inside of your homes at the time of the swarm event without their wings, near every entry point, like doors, windows, fireplaces, and venta hoods. You'll likely find some dead or dying in those same spots the following morning. They aren't really built to survive above ground for very long and die if they don't find a place to nest. So, if I'm seeing these swarmers, do I need to be concerned? The short answer is, if you aren't already being proactive, yes. But the real answer is a little more nuanced. When the swarms happen, it is an event. You see it, your neighbor sees it, the random person at the gas station sees it. It creates a buzz and is quickly blown up all over social media and even gets talked about on the local news. As a pest control professional, when this happens, we see the absolute largest volume of calls and inquiries because of it. So needless to say, termite concerns are at their peak for the general public because everyone has either experienced a termite problem on their home in the past or has heard nightmare stories about someone they know that has had a problem. And when you see termites swarming so thick they show up on the weather radar, it kind of gets everybody uneasy. But let me share a little secret with you. The real threat, the threat of termites attacking your home, doesn't change from season to season. The real threat is the one you don't see. The colonies living in the ground all the time, constantly foraging for new food, and the swarms are only a visual realization of this. To quote one of my favorite movies of all time, Fight Club, on a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. If you don't already have an active problem feeding on your home, and you aren't doing something to proactively address the impending threat, you will end up with a problem. It could be a year, it could be 10, it might be tomorrow. So how can you tell if you have an active problem feeding on your home? I can tell you what we're looking for when we do a termite inspection. During swarm season, you may see mud protrusion coming out of the walls or ceilings that almost seem to form overnight. These are called swarm castles. And if you're seeing this, get ready. The swarm that happens outside is about to happen inside. And it will be extremely obvious that you have a problem. Next up are some of the more not so obvious things. Shelter tubes coming up the sides of the foundation, or what we like to call mud tunnels, either on the walls of the foundation or piers. Then you start getting into some of the even more not so obvious signs and indications, such as discoloration in sheetrock, warped baseboards or floors, bows or bulges in walls and ceilings, and very tiny pick holes in sheetrock. Trained pest professionals, including myself, will typically offer a free inspection to be able to provide accurate proposal information for either curative or preventive services, which comes to my last bit of information and professional advice. And if you don't remember a word of what I've said thus far, please take this advice to heart. If you own a home along the Gulf Coast region, do yourself a favor and protect that investment with a preventive termite treatment. The cost of prevention is minuscule compared to the cost to repair the damages termites can cause. In fact, it's estimated to cost homeowners over $5 billion annually in the United States. And a large percentage of that is right here on the Gulf due to the Formosan termite problems we have. And if you wait to get a problem, not only are the costs of repair going to be significant, but the cost of treatment is going to increase as well. So look, if you have an active problem already, treating sooner is better than later, because every day you wait is more damage that's being done. And I can definitely help you with that. However, I would like it so much more to help you be proactive in preventing a problem in the first place. And if you are being proactive, you may not experience the benefit of that choice, but understand that that's an experience I don't wish on anyone. And I can only share my own experience and hope that I've been able to communicate it in a way you can understand, so you are as informed as possible and can then make the right decision for you. I'm David Thibodeau with J&J Exterminating, where we've been shielding what's near and dear for over 60 years.